Today we are diving into family law with attorney Hillary Hux with Garrett Walker, Akoff and Olson attorneys at law, and she's here to discuss divorce, alimony, grandparents' rights, prenups, the topics people don't usually like to bring up but always have questions about. So get your questions answered by texting them to 336-379-5775, and of course we'll be sure to read them live on air. So Hillary, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and start with the basic definition of divorce. Let's start there.
Sure. So, divorce, in the simplest terms, terminates the marital relationship, just puts an end to it.
Gotcha. And then annulment.
Yeah, so the difference between a divorce and an annulment is going to completely void the marriage. It'll make it as though it never existed. It's void from the beginning. In a divorce, the marriage existed. You're just putting an end to it. And there are different grounds for both. Typically, for divorce in North Carolina, all you have to prove is that you've lived separate and apart from your spouse with the intent to terminate the marital relationship for at least a year prior to filing. Annulment is very different. There's some really specific grounds that you have to prove. And so I have a lot of people come to my office asking about an annulment when chances are what they need is a divorce.
Gotcha. So how does someone get an annulment? How do they start with that?
Yeah, so really the filing of any action is going to start with a complaint. That's just the document that says the grounds for whatever it is you're asking for, some basic facts about the situation, and it's going to open up a file over at the courthouse that gets served on the opposing party and gives them notice of the action.
Gotcha. And is someone entitled to alimony if they've had an affair before separating from their spouse?
No, but of course, there's some proof issues there. If either of the spouses has had an illicit sexual behavior incident, then that's going to affect whether there is going to be an entitlement to alimony for the dependent spouse and whether the supporting spouse must pay alimony. Also, if you can't necessarily prove that illicit sexual behavior occurred, marital misconduct does play a role in alimony as well. So when we're looking at the amount and the duration of an award of alimony, there's 16 different factors that are set out in the statute that a court would look at for making the determination as to that amount and duration. Marital misconduct is one of them. And marital misconduct, yes, that can be an affair, even just an emotional affair, but it can be also a number of other things, drug or alcohol abuse, domestic violence, something like that. All of that would fall under the umbrella of marital misconduct.
What is legal separation?
That's a good one. People ask me that a lot. They say, "Oh, I'm not legally separated," or "I need to get legally separated." You're legally separated if you have separated households, you're living separate and apart with the intent to terminate that marital relationship. You don't need a separation agreement or any kind of agreement to start that clock running of the necessary 1 year of separation. You don't need to, prove that 1 year, generally speaking. Typically, unless it's contested, your word that you've been separated for that year with that intent is going to be enough. A separation agreement does a lot of things, and they're really useful, but it's not a requirement to start that clock ticking for a divorce.
And how much alimony will a person get?
So that's going to go back to those 16 factors. Unlike child support, which has a formula, alimony doesn't. There are some general rules of thumb that we can give a client based on how long they've been married, what the household income is, what kind of standard of living they're used to. We can make some educated, I don't want to say guesses because they're not guesses. They're estimates, let's put it that way. But all of these 16 different factors are going to come into play. So ages of the spouses, career opportunities, earning potential, needs of each of the spouses, those things are going to play a big role.
What are some reasons, for alimony, and then reasons that alimony can also end as well too?
So, by statute, alimony is going to end with the death of either of the spouses or the remarriage or cohabitation of the dependent spouse. So, the dependent spouse is the person receiving alimony. If they remarry, it's going to end. And also, if they move in with a new significant other and are sharing household expenses, then the alimony is also going to end for that reason.
And we probably have about 30 seconds left in this first part of our Q&A, but what are grandparents' rights?
So, a lot of people come into my office saying, "Oh, I'm a grandparent. I have no rights at all." That's really not true in North Carolina. They have rights in two different ways. The first one would be visitation. If there is an open custody action, if there is not an intact nuclear family unit, then a grandparent can intervene in that existing custody action and ask for visitation. They can also ask for custody. They can initiate an action for custody, but in doing so, they have to allege that both of the parents have acted inconsistently with their constitutional rights or are unfit to be parents.
Got it. Well, we'll take a pause right here and answer a few more questions right after the break because we have a lot to get to. So we'll be right back.